What would you do for $50,000 a month? Would you go into space and work on an alien planet for 2 years? For Emmett Atwater, the answer is easy. For today's video, we'll be talking about the sci-fi young adult series Nyxia by Scott Reintgen. Scott Reintgen is a former high school English and creative writing teacher from North Carolina. I didn't know how to pronounce his last name, so I went to look it up, and his website is actually www.itspronouncedrankin.com, so that's pretty helpful. His other books include the middle school fantasy series Tail Spinners and The Problem with Prophecies. His young adult novels include the Ashlord series, which seems pretty cool, and I'll probably check it out in the future. Just as an FYI, for this video, I will be looking at the series as a whole, so all 3 books in the trilogy. Emmett Atwater, an underprivileged teen from Detroit, is recruited along with 9 other teenagers for the once-in-a-lifetime chance to fly up into space and work for the famed corporation Babel Communications on a foreign planet called Eden. It seems promising enough. They'll each earn $50,000 for their families for the rest of their lives. Emmett's mother is dying from kidney failure, so the choice for him is obvious. He needs money for his mother's medical treatment. They learn that their job on the planet Eden will be mining a mysterious and powerful foreign substance called Nyxia. However, the teens soon begin to realize that things are never as simple as they seem with Babel. When they board the ship, called Genesis 11, they learn that they must compete for the chance to work on Eden, and only 8 out of the 10 participants will actually make the cut and win the prize money. That's the premise of the first book. Without spoiling too much, the following 2 books explore Eden more and center more on the alien race and on Babel's relationship with the aliens. Nyxia has been described as Hunger Games in space, but it's more than that. It's less of overcoming an oppressive and authoritarian government and more about overcoming your prejudices and learning the value of family and friendship. Let's look at the setting. Nyxia is set in the not-so-distant future. I don't think the book actually ever says what year it takes place. It does mention 2036 as being in the distant past, so maybe it's like around the year 2050 or so. Most of the first book takes place on the futuristic spaceship Genesis 11, and books 2 and 3 spend much more time on the planet Eden, which the kids learn is both very similar and very different to the planet Earth at the same time. Emmett Atwater is the book's main protagonist. Let me preface the rest of what I'm going to say with this. I assigned this book as one of the independent book options earlier in the year. I teach at a high school that is mainly Hispanic and African American, and I really do think it's good for students that are minorities to see themselves in characters, especially the main character. So I really did like that about this book. It gave my students the chance to relate a little bit more to the characters. Nyxia features a very diverse cast. As I mentioned earlier, teens are selected to participate in Babel's lottery. They're selected from all over the world. There's Kaya, Emmett's Japanese roommate, Bilal, his Palestinian companion, Azima, the African girl focused on fighting to the top while also finding a suitable husband. One of my favorite parts of this series is watching the friendships and bonds grow between the kids. Next, let's look at some of the themes in Nyxia. Family, whether biological or created through friendships. Showing mercy, staying true to yourself and your values, overcoming prejudices and differences from different cultures, even alien cultures. There are some Christian themes and references, but they're not really overly in your face. I mean, Babel's obviously named for the Tower of Babel. Eden, of course, is likely named for the Garden of Eden. As far as content warnings go, Nyxia does contain a fair amount of violence, blood and gore, murder, and war-related themes. It's nothing too graphic for a high schooler to handle, but it is there. Overall, the Nyxia series is pretty well loved among fans, each book consistently receiving about a 4 out of 5 star rating on Goodreads, a 96% approval rating on Google, and about a 4.7 out of 5 stars on Amazon. So for my personal review, I'll just take it book by book. I found that the second and third books are much more action-packed and interesting than the first book. In the first book, there's a lot of, okay, we're competing, okay, we're still competing, I'm not winning, I'm still not winning, we're still competing, so on and so forth. There's not much detail into the planet that they're visiting, like, at all. I just feel like the first book is more of an introduction to the series. It's kind of like a teaser to the rest of the universe. I did like the simplicity of it all, but it really just left me wanting more. But at the end of the day, it still clearly drew me in enough to read the rest of the series. Nyxia Unleashed, the second book in the series, picks up the pace a lot. The friendships are so much more developed, and that's really a fun part of the book. We get into the world of the aliens, we get more twists and turns. It's basically just a bigger book to me. The third book, Nyxia Uprising, is just all action, action, action. The language here is the best in my opinion. The writing just flows really well in the third book. It feels like everyone's found their voice in this book. Speaking of, in the third one, there's many different POVs, which I personally always like, but others might not like it if you just liked hearing everything from Emmett's perspective. I kind of wished this last book wasn't nothing but non-stop action and had more time to slow down and reflect a bit. Overall, it's fun. There's plenty of comic relief, like quips and jokes between the characters. They have a good rapport and it's fun to read that. I did think some of their relationships were a bit forced, like I didn't really feel like it was all necessary. Some of the characters are fairly predictable, they follow tropes. Some of the characters are one-dimensional. There's like the comic relief guy that's always cracking jokes, the know-it-all, the nice guy who can do no wrong and everyone loves him. Some of the characters just don't develop much in 3 books. There are some, I guess, cheesy moments here and there that were just a little too predictable. But overall, the language is authentic and witty and really fun to read. Nyxia is heavy enough to get you invested, but light enough for a casual or younger reader. Overall, it's a really good, likable series, and it's one that I think I would reread if given the chance. Oh, and just as a side note, if you are into audiobooks, like I am, the audiobooks were really good. They had different voices for different characters, which I really liked. So, have you read Nyxia? If so, what did you think? If you have any book suggestions for me, please feel free to drop a comment or send me a message. So that's all I have for today. I'll see you next time.